Hi there, you are watching the Mechanical SLR Lounge, and today I have for you something that is mechanical, but is not an SLR. This is the Neoca SV Deluxe. So Neoca was a very short-lived camera company. They survived for only about 9 to 10 years from what I could gather from various conflicting sources. So it appears that they were founded in 1950 to 1951 and folded into bankruptcy in 1960/61. They started as Mizuho Optical, and then a couple years later changed their name to Mizuho Camera. And then finally in 1954, they settled on the name Neoca. So their first cameras were actually medium format folding cameras mostly. They didn't get into 35mm cameras until the mid 1950s. Their other cameras were nothing particularly interesting. They were just kind of the standard Japanese folding cameras. So the SV Deluxe, which is what I have here, was actually the pinnacle of their 35mm camera design. So this camera was actually released in 1960, right before they folded. I couldn't find any production numbers on how many were made, but judging from their lack of presence on eBay and other like selling platforms, I actually haven't been able to find any of the SV Deluxe variation. I've heard people talk about them, but never actually seen others. So I think it's safe to say that they're quite challenging to find. And this one I actually found locally. It belonged to this young guy's grandfather, I believe, and had just been sitting around for a very long time. So as a result, it is in very nice condition. The construction is quite nice. I don't have any major gripes. It's nothing particularly special. It has a decent weight to it. It is very compact, as you can probably tell. Put my hand beside it like that. It's quite small, very maneuverable and nimble, which is nice in a rangefinder. The highlight of this camera is by far the lens. As I said, the build quality is nothing to scoff at, but it's nothing particularly special either. I have disassembled this camera. The metal plating is kind of on the thinner side. It's not like so thin as to be alarming, but definitely could be thicker. But the highlight is the lens by far. This is a Zunow 45mm or 4.5 centimeter, as it's listed here, f1.8. Zunow actually survived for an even shorter period of time than Neoca. They were only around for about 5 years, beginning in the 1950s and ending in 1960, I believe. But they were responsible for some very innovative designs at the time. There's a Leica thread mount lens, the 50mm f1.1, that is very highly sought after, very hard to find, and very expensive. This is not that. But regardless, Zunow is a very well-regarded optical, or was a very well-regarded optical company. And it's very interesting that Neoca ended up using Zunow lenses on their cameras. The two were quite closely connected throughout their lives for whatever reason. They both struggled financially, so perhaps they found some camaraderie in that. But I digress. So, top of the camera, we have the film rewind here. We've got a cold shoe. Sorry, it's just a little adapter for a light meter I have. Cold shoe here. If you remove this slider, you will have the rangefinder adjustment screws there. And then there's another rangefinder adjustment screw under here, I believe. I'm trying to go back in my memory from when I disassembled this camera, but that was a while ago. You also have an ISO reminder dial here, which is quite interesting. This metal, silver metal ring rotates around. Film counter window right there. You have the shutter advance lever here. It's very smooth. The throw is about 180 degrees, so it's not too far. And shutter button is very smooth as well. Now, one of the biggest things that bothers me is this camera is actually missing. There should be a red button here that says SV Deluxe or SV Super Deluxe. This one is missing the button. It obviously doesn't inhibit it mechanically in any way, but it's just kind of irritating that there's an empty socket there for a button. To open the back door, you just lift down on that tab there. That will open up the back. Very standard pressure plate, like you got the spindles here. That's the action when you on the film. Nothing particularly interesting. The only thing about this camera that's different than a lot of many other cameras, you actually have to push this back up to lock the back door. So it's not spring-loaded, which again is not like the biggest. A recurring theme will be, it's annoying, but it's not a big deal. And I really, really love this camera, but there's just a few things where it's like, did they really think about the design choice or the engineering decision? This is one of those. So this is not spring-loaded. You have to push it in, push that up. It's really not a big deal. It's just a minor irritant of mine. So this is a rangefinder camera. It does not have parallax correction, which doesn't matter too much if you're not doing super close-up shots. But it is something to be aware of. The frame lines are relatively clear. The focusing patch is very, very easy to use, actually. Speaking of focusing, we'll actually move to the front of the camera now. So this here is the little focusing knob. It's a very, very short throw. I relubricated it, so it's buttery smooth, very, very nice to use. Self-timer is located right here. You've got your flash switch down here, X and M. X is for regular flashes, M would be for bulb flashes, which nobody uses anymore because they're irrelevant in every way. I'm not sure about the optical design of this lens. I did have it mostly pulled apart, but I neglected to remember to count the lens elements. I believe there were 3 in the front and maybe 2 in the back. That is rather 3 in front of the shutter and 2 to the rear of the shutter, but I can't remember exactly, so don't take that information for granted. You have the shutter speed and aperture dials right here. So you have from a bulb all the way up to 1/500th of a second. And another very nice feature of this camera is the transition from 250 to 500 is not harder than the switch between other shutter speeds. On cameras that use this type of shutter, a leaf shutter, they often need an extra spring on the fastest shutter speed to make the shutter be able to fire that quickly. And often that will result in the last click of shutter speed being extra hard to push past. But as I said, on this camera, it feels the exact same as the other cameras, as the other shutter speeds. So that is nice. Aperture, it's right here. Also very nice, smooth, defined clicks. Very, very nice to use. Then you also have your depth of field scale here. Now, it is usable, but it is not easy to see at all, especially in either direct sunlight or in shadow. These lines are very, very thin. The numbers are tiny. They have a lot of space on here to make the numbers and lines thicker and bigger. I don't really know why they didn't. Again, just another minor gripe that I have with this camera. The rangefinder is good at its job. It's a little bit dim, but it's perfectly fine in terms of finding focus, composing your image. And And yeah, I have no major complaints. It uses mirrors and lenses instead of solid prisms, so if that's a deal breaker for you, then this camera is not for you, if you can even find it. I guess that isn't too relevant. But again, it does its job, so no major complaints. Probably my biggest issue with this camera is this front plate here. So you can see there's a screw there, screw there, screw there, and screw there. This front plate lifts off, but unfortunately, there is nothing at the top covering. There's a tiny, you won't be able to see it on camera, I don't believe, but there's a very small gap between this front plate and the top plate, and it's just big enough to let dust get through. And that is extremely annoying. As I said, I completely tore this camera down, cleaned everything. It was very hazy and dusty before, so I cleaned everything out. But I'm already getting dust in behind this glass because of the tiny gap at the top here. So if they just put like a tiny like rubber seal, or if they had metal come out from the top plate and overlay the front plate, I feel like that would have been a much better design choice, because this, you just end up with a lot of dust in your viewfinder, and that's very, very annoying. In terms of the lens performance itself, I have no complaints whatsoever. I really love the way that it presents color. It's very sharp. It's fast at f1.8. It was very uncommon to find a lens this fast on rangefinders, fixed lens rangefinders, that is. So that's very useful in low light situations. And it's a Zunow lens, which is interesting. That I really like rare things. That's why I bought this camera. I couldn't find any information for it online, really, and that immediately made me more interested. I just love neglected or unknown things. When I got it, there was oil on the shutter blades. I've done my best to clean them. I still have intermittent issues, so I will probably take it to a proper camera tech and get the shutter fully serviced, because I am beginning to use this as one of my main cameras. I've mostly used SLRs, but I'm beginning to catch the rangefinder bug, so there's that. Overall, if you can find one of these for a good price that is under like $500, I would say, go for it. But anytime I've found one of these listed online, or seen people talking about it on forums, they usually go for like around $1,200 to $1,500. And I believe that's US, not Canadian. So they're not cheap. This one, again, I was very lucky. It was a local guy. I got a very good deal, and that's why I bought it. But even the SV, because as I said, this is the SV Deluxe with the 4.5 centimeter 1.8. There's the regular Neoca 35 SV, sometimes called the SV Super. And that came with a 4.5 centimeter f2.8 lens. And that camera sells on eBay for around $300 to $500. And that is the less desirable of the two. Still a perfectly good camera. I don't have personal experience, but from what I've read and seen online, people seem to have no gripes. But regardless, these are more collectible cameras, and you can get better quality for less money or equal money. This is just more for the interest / wow factor. I just realized I didn't tell you about the bottom. It's quite bare. You just have a standard tripod mounting socket, the film release button right here, which you do have to hold as you're winding up the film, which is annoying, but that's kind of common for older rangefinder cameras, especially with fixed lenses for whatever reason. I think that about sums it up, really. This is one of my favorite cameras to use. It's very small, very light. You can shoot very quickly with it. The advanced action is very smooth. Shutter button's smooth. It's easy to use. Everything is very everything's within finger's reach, I guess you could say, which is very nice. And yeah, if you can find one locally, cheaply, get one, unless you're a particularly strange camera collector and that you like Neoca cameras and want to pay a premium. But yeah, that's the Neoca SV Deluxe. I hope you found this useful, and I hope you enjoy your day. Thanks for watching. Bye.